Next we have William Hatton from Boffa Miskell. William's going to come up and talk about Korero as community building. So, welcome.
Ko rihi te manu, tā kiri mai te ata, kāwatia, ti hei mauri ora. Ai te mitu tahi ki te hunga wairua. Te atua, nāna nei o ngā mea katoa tēnā koe. Te whare whakapiri mai tātou, tūtonu tēnā koe. Ai papa tuanuku, tākoto ki waho, tākoto tēnā koe. Ai ngā mate, ngā tini aitua, te maraikura, Megan, mui mai rā. Te mihi tuarua, ki te hunga ora. Ka nui te mihi, ngā mana whina o tēnei rohe. No mā tātua, me taki te waka, a ngā te rangi nui, ngai te rangi, ngā te pukunga. Kei te mihi. Aku tuakana, aku teina. O tēnei wā, ka nui te mihi ki a koutou. Ko wai au, ko William kiriru tirangi tōku ingoa, e uri au no Ngāti Kahumunu, Ngāti Rongo mai wahine, Ngāti Raukawa rangi tāne me maupoko, e Ngāti Pākehā tauiwi hoki. He kai hoa whenua au, nā reira, kei te mihi. Before you, I share this space, te mata o Rongo Kako. It is where I was born and raised, under the veil of Rongo Kako. This is a photo of my kāinga back home in Te Matua Maui, Hawke's Bay. This is my kāinga tahi, and that is my whakapapa, shown on the land. No te maia mai tāwhiti, ki rangi tāne, kei te mihi. So my kōrero today is kua tīmata te kōrero. Let's start the conversations. Not so much around how, in terms of design and what that looks like, but in terms of the processes around engagement and building relationships. Firstly, with Korero, I want to share with you in terms of te tiriti, our understanding and our obligations as landscape architects, as designers, as people of this land. He kākanua, how we can nurture our tamariki, our rangatahi, within these spaces, and grow them within these spaces with the protection and the guidance from our pākeke, our kaumatua, the hapori, working with our communities, manaki whenua, protecting and caring for the land and the people, and our rangatahi moa pōpō, our leaders of tomorrow. So I like to start with te tiriti, understand the obligations as tangata whenua, as tangata tiriti. Shown in the top left-hand corner, probably to put to you, but is one of my tupuna, Tauiki. He was the 94th signatory of Te Tiriti o Waitangi no Raukawa Moana. And so it is our shared duty and obligation to acknowledge and recognise this for tangata whenua culture, identity, values and our resources. It is a living document, it is living through us now, and it will always continue to live through us. Within te tiriti, it's around understanding our meanings and the layers that are within that, around mana, tino rangatiratanga, and kawanatanga. Understanding that the whenua has its own unique way of achieving Māori specific outcomes, as well as our community outcomes, and understanding that the first kōrero was within te tiriti. It is why we stand here today, why we sit here today, and why we are here as a partnership, as a collaboration, as a wara opi. As I've shown earlier, there's more than one way to achieve outcomes, Māori, non-Māori, taiwi, within our profession, particularly focusing on the principles of partnership, participation and protection. So from that, in terms of he kākano, in terms of engagement and how we come up with meaningful and valued design outcomes for working with our tamariki and our rangatei to achieve their spaces, their identity within the eyes of their tupuna, their ancestors. So I'll show a few case studies that reflect some of the initial processes in terms of engagement with our kura, with our whānau, with our hapu, in terms of the space that we all work in. We know that today, with many projects, working with iwi, hapu, whānau, mana whenua, mātāwaka, is a crucial component to the way we design. So this is very roots-based in terms of working with our kaumātua first to understand that kōrero, or the knowledge, the pūrākau that they hold, and allowing our rangatahi, our tamariki, to interpret that through their eyes. The outcomes of these wānanga, working with our kura, kaupapa, our tamariki who are aged, these tamariki were aged 11 to 12, thinking of ways to see themselves within the spaces that they learn, they share with their whānau, their hapu and their iwi. It is important for our tauira to be involved in the discussions and interpretation of their local kōrero through their design. So these are some of the tamariki I've worked with, their ko whaiwhai, interpreting the pūrākau from their ancestors, seeing themselves in the spaces that they live, they breathe, and that they learn, and providing them to learn and grow for now and for the future. This next one is working more with our rangatahi. This is a first in terms of profession, working with kura kaupapa, as this was done in full te reo Māori. This project was done with te kura kaupapa Māori o Hāne Waititi Marae, and it works through a collaborative process around council objectives, community objectives, and allowing rangatahi to see themselves and to portray themselves and to see the design of their space. Within that, we developed a process, noting that not all processes of Te Ao Māori are the same. They are unique in their own way. So this diagram reflects that process that we developed in terms of the engagement, whakawhiti, whakawhanaunga, relationships building, whakapapa, understanding layers, whakaahua, co-designing or designing with our rangatei, and whakatinana, the manifestation of what that is. So firstly, through whakawhanaungatanga, developing relationships. I guess just to go back in terms of this project, it was NCA Level 2 accredited. It was a course that we developed in partnership with Unitec, in partnership with council, in partnership with community groups. It is considered a first of its kind. And so we had 7 rangatahi involved within this space, looking to achieve the outcomes that council set in place in terms of their objectives within their strategies. So in terms of whakawhanaungatanga, it was around developing their relationships, and through that we developed those relationships through hikoi, to understanding the whakapapa of one another, to understanding the whakapapa of the whenua, and reading the whenua in all its means. And then building into that, understanding those cultural layers that are in between, telling through pūrākau, kōrero, everything in between of what these rangatahi, how they viewed the landscape, how they understood the landscape, through pattern, through kōrero. Whakaahua, through co-designing with them, bringing them into spaces that they don't necessarily see themselves, but also working within the spaces that they feel comfortable with. and whakatinana, manifesting those Māori outcomes. These rangatahi achieved with merit and excellence within level 2. These outcomes in terms of these park features was the objectives of how can we make spaces within parks be more reflective of our cultural identity. So, moving to the hapori, working with and for our community. We all co-design with community, but in particular for this one, working with iwi and hapu specifically. So this was working with Te Puna Maunga in terms of looking at outcomes of integrated play and integrated cultural layers within the landscape. So facilitating korero with community, with rangatahi, what they'd like to see in these spaces that don't necessarily reflect them, but allows them the opportunity to do that. So providing outcomes for whānau to korero and have their say about the spaces in which they are designing. It's also an intergenerational approach. The tuakana teina relationships, it's intergenerational, and allowing the modi of the people to drive the decisions of placekeeping is the term I use, or over placemaking of the unique environments. It's about listening and learning from one another and understanding, we are always students of life. Are the wise words from a kaumatua, Harry Williams. And it's about activating expressions of identity and tūranga wawa, a sense of belonging in the places we live, be it through play in these spaces. Marae ki whenua, protecting and caring for the land and people. So as Māori, as tangata whenua, there's this whakatau ki te toto o te tangata he kai, te oranga o te tangata he whenua. The blood of the people is sustained by the food, the well-being of the people is sustained by the land. We may all know this image here. This is of iwi mātau, and so kind of switching hats here in terms of working with them, in terms of understanding the protection of their whenua. It goes back to that te tiriti around partnership and participation. There's often been a lack of understanding of Indigenous worldviews in Aotearoa and Te Ao Māori, particularly whenua and the importance of people and place. Working with whānau to achieve a Te Ao Māori approach to landscape assessment embedded within a cultural values framework. For Māori, we see the land, all land is cultural land. It's cultural landscape. And so this process was done with wahine to develop an understanding of how we perceive whenua and how we can protect whenua for the future. By developing, rather than an up-down approach, a more integrated methodology of the way we represent whenua Māori. So if you want to understand more around that, there's this beautiful puka outside that was developed. But not only that, it captures the korero of Māori. It captures the korero and the views of what whenua means, what it is, and what it means to be kai huahua whenua here in Aotearoa, and for the future. Like I said, the cultural landscape of Uwhirimata was understood through a review of the natural, cultural and Indigenous perspectives, developing a distinct and unique whakapapa associated to whenua. And so moving into our rangatira mo apopo, growing the capability and capacity for our future. I've been luckily enough to start this year to be a lecturer alongside Sybil, kia ora Sybil, working with our rangatahi to grow their capability, their capacity within the spaces of Te Ao Māori. We often see graduates come out of university having a minimal understanding of Te Ao Māori. So being able to awhi that kaupapa and to grow that kaupapa in terms of understanding what it means to be landscape architects here in Aotearoa. So understanding the ways of what the impacts of the past and understanding how we can change and shift the landscape and what is our role within that. So do wānanga, our rangatahi, develop these responses to these pātai you see here. To be comfortable, we need to be uncomfortable. I say that we need to acknowledge the past, acknowledge what has been done, good, bad, the mama, the pain, so that we can better grow our future. So bringing these rangatahi into these spaces that they don't necessarily see themselves in, but feel comfortable to be in, building their capability, capacity as leaders, as future kairoa for tomorrow. So in terms of the theme, Te Rangi Tāmero, radical reorientation, it's not so much around the design, but more around the process and understanding from the beginning and how that can influence the end product or the end outcomes goals. So kua takoto te manuka, I'm laying down this challenge to you all to start with that kōrero, kua tīmata te kōrero. Like I said, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. All approaches are different. So we often get caught up in, this is that way, this is this and this, ticking the boxes. It is more than a tick the box. It is more around developing those relationships through that kōrero and through that partnership and that participation. As I said there, upholding te tiriti through equal partnership and participation, acknowledging that, and building from existing Māori methods of design and engagement, te whare tapawha te aranga, knowing that they are models that Māori have introduced and will always continue to grow. So it is not a now, but it's something that's growing. Growing the capability and capacity within our community and practice. So those case studies that I showed in terms of those rangatahi, those tamariki, allowing them to be their kaitiaki for their whenua, allowing them to see themselves within the spaces that they live and breathe. And importantly, educating and building the confidence within ourselves as kai awhina whenua. Understanding, Aotearoa from its earliest roots to where we are now and where we will be going. Nō reira, ko whakamutu te kōrero, ki te tautoko tēnei kaupapa a he whakatauki, ko te amorangi ki moa, ko te hapai o ki muri. Those that will lead from the front, and those will follow. Nō reira, apiti hono tātai hono, te hungamate ki te hungamate, apiti hono tātai hono, te huora ki te huora. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, a tēnā rā tata katoa.